This is Discover USA Collapse, and today we're exposing a story that is not just shocking, it's terrifying. Across America, Aldi has built its image as the budget-friendly store where families can trust what they buy. But hidden behind those cheap prices are products so dangerous that 9 states have already been forced to issue recalls. And some health departments are even using the words, "destroy immediately." These aren't minor slip-ups or a single bad shipment. This is systemic, nationwide, and it's happening quietly, while most shoppers have no idea they're taking these risks home to their kids. Imagine walking into Aldi, grabbing a familiar product you've bought for years, and finding out days later it was pulled from shelves because it contained toxic chemicals, bacterial contamination, or even undeclared allergens that could put lives at risk in seconds. The scariest part? Many of these items were still being sold for days after the first warnings went public. Families unknowingly stocked their fridges and freezers with foods that regulators now say must be recalled and destroyed at all costs. Why were customers not told immediately? How many more states will be dragged into this before it's too late? Stay with us, because by the end of this video, you'll see the receipts, the brand names, and the foods you may have in your home right now that could be far more dangerous than you think. Number 4. Aldi frozen chicken strips. What if I told you that one of Aldi's most popular freezer staples, the bag of frozen chicken strips that countless families rely on for quick weeknight dinners, has quietly become one of the most alarming products on their shelves? Parents buy it thinking it's a safe, affordable protein source, something easy to toss in the oven and feed their kids. But state regulators in at least 9 regions have sounded the alarm after discovering that recent shipments were contaminated with strains of Salmonella enteritidis, a bacteria so aggressive that the Centers for Disease Control has linked it to hospitalizations and even deaths in vulnerable populations. The numbers aren't small. Over 36 confirmed cases of severe gastrointestinal illness were traced back to Aldi's frozen chicken in just a single quarter. And epidemiologists estimate that the true number is easily 4 to 5 times higher. Since most people never officially report foodborne illness, families thought their stomach cramps or their child's fever were just a seasonal bug, when in fact they were ingesting tainted poultry that should have been destroyed before it ever left the warehouse. And this isn't just about a random bad batch. According to a leaked inspection report from a Midwest processing plant, inspectors found evidence of improper temperature controls, broken machinery leaking hydraulic fluid near the conveyor belts, and even employees documenting that raw chicken sat unrefrigerated for up to 6 hours during a power outage, only to be packaged and shipped as if nothing happened. Think about that. Meat left in the danger zone, warm enough for bacteria to multiply by the millions, then sealed, frozen, and labeled with Aldi's budget-friendly packaging. By the time it reached store freezers, the contamination was invisible. No bad smell, no odd texture. Just the same golden brown chicken strips shoppers had trusted for years. But beneath the breading, an invisible health crisis was waiting to erupt. Consumers began flooding online forums and Aldi's own social media pages with disturbing stories. One mother in Ohio wrote that her 6-year-old daughter ended up in the ER with a 104-degree fever after eating the chicken strips, only to learn later that the product was on a silent recall list. Another customer in Georgia described vomiting so severe she had to miss an entire week of work, costing her nearly $800 in lost wages, all because of what she thought was a safe, family-friendly meal. Yet despite these horror stories, Aldi was slow to act. Official recall notices were buried on obscure government websites, not blasted out in-store or through emails, meaning most shoppers never saw them. Shelves stayed stocked, and cashiers continued ringing up contaminated food well into the recall period. Behind the scenes, USDA investigators were scrambling to trace the source of the contamination. Their reports revealed something chilling. The chicken wasn't coming from one isolated supplier, but from multiple contracted facilities across the Southeast, meaning this wasn't a one-off issue, it was systemic. Worse, some of these facilities had a long history of violations, including previous fines for failing to control Listeria monocytogenes contamination. Yet Aldi kept renewing contracts, prioritizing low prices over food safety. The brand that promised customers quality made simple had, in effect, gambled with their health. The economic fallout has already started. Independent poultry farmers who supply better quality meat are furious, accusing Aldi of undercutting the market by relying on mass producers that cut corners. Lawsuits have been filed in at least 3 states, with one class action claiming that Aldi knowingly sold unsafe food. And while Aldi is pledged to review its supply chain, critics argue that the brand only reacts when the headlines become impossible to ignore. Imagine how many more families will suffer before they take preventive action instead of damage control. The terrifying part is how quickly this can spiral. A single bag of frozen chicken strips can be shared across multiple meals in a household, meaning one contaminated package might sicken an entire family. Children, the elderly, and those with weaker immune systems face the gravest risk, with salmonella infections leading to long-term complications like reactive arthritis or kidney damage. These aren't abstract warnings. They're real-world consequences that families are living through right now. If regulators in 9 states are already demanding destruction of these products, how many more silent cases are happening in the other 41? And why hasn't Aldi stepped up with a nationwide recall before things get worse? Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. When a product this widely distributed gets contaminated, the recall system is often too slow to protect everyone. By the time you hear about it on the news, the food is already in your freezer, already on your table, already inside your family's bodies. And Aldi's handling of this situation, minimizing publicity, delaying removal from shelves, shows a shocking disregard for the very customers who built their empire. Low prices mean nothing when the cost is your health, your wages, or your child's safety. The frozen chicken strips at Aldi may look like a harmless budget meal, but the evidence piling up suggests they are part of a dangerous pattern. Cut costs, ignore red flags, and let the consumer pay the price in hospital bills and suffering. So the next time you see those glossy bags in the freezer aisle, ask yourself, is that convenience worth the risk? Or is Aldi quietly gambling with your life every time they prioritize margins over safety? Because when 9 states are saying these products must be recalled and destroyed at all costs, maybe the warning isn't just for regulators. It's for you, standing right there in the aisle, deciding what to put in your cart. Number 3, Aldi canned peaches. Aldi has been selling canned fruits for decades, marketing them as wholesome, family-friendly staples. The kind of product you grab without thinking. Something cheap, reliable, and always sitting in the pantry ready for dessert or a quick snack. But behind that cheerful label of syrup-soaked peaches lies one of the most shocking recalls to ever hit this brand. Because multiple states, including California, Illinois, and New York have confirmed that Aldi canned peaches contain alarming levels of heavy metals, like lead and cadmium, that far exceed the safety limits set by the FDA and WHO. This isn't just a minor contamination. This is poison hidden in a can, quietly stocked on shelves, and sold to unsuspecting families who had no idea they were feeding toxins to their children and elderly loved ones. Imagine opening a can, pouring out those golden slices into a bowl for your toddler, and realizing later that what you served wasn't fruit at all, but a dose of neurotoxins linked to developmental delays, memory loss, kidney damage, and in the worst cases, permanent cognitive decline. Parents trusted Aldi's brand because of the promise of affordable quality, but regulators and whistleblowers are now showing that this trust was misplaced, and that Aldi knowingly sourced peaches from suppliers with repeated violations for unsafe equipment, contaminated water sources, and corroded machinery leaching metals into the fruit during processing. One state lab test revealed metal concentrations up to 3 times higher than the federal threshold. And the shocking part is how many cans slipped through undetected into interstate shipments, meaning that while 9 states have already issued recalls and demanded destruction of these products, consumers in dozens of other states are likely still eating the exact same toxic peaches without any warning at all. The stories emerging from real families are heartbreaking and enraging. One grandmother in New Jersey said she had been buying Aldi canned peaches for years on her limited pension, believing she was providing something sweet and safe for her granddaughter. But when she read about the recall, she demanded a blood test. And the results showed elevated lead levels in a 6-year-old girl who had done nothing but eat what her family thought was safe food. Another consumer in Texas described the peaches as having a metallic aftertaste so strong that her lips felt numb. And when she contacted Aldi customer service, she received nothing but a canned apology and a $5 coupon. No acknowledgement of heavy metals. No admission of wrongdoing. Just a corporate attempt to sweep it under the rug, as if her health and safety could be traded for a discount voucher. These are not isolated anecdotes. These are warning flares that point to a bigger systemic failure in Aldi's sourcing practices. And instead of pulling every can from shelves immediately, the company chose silence, delay, and damage control. Scientists have been warning for years that canned fruits sourced from poorly maintained overseas factories are at extreme risk of heavy metal contamination because aging equipment corrodes, solder leaches into syrup, and water treatment systems fail. And Aldi's relentless drive for the cheapest suppliers means these risks are magnified 100 times over. In fact, leaked documents from a watchdog group show Aldi executives were aware of supplier violations as early as 2022. Yet contracts were quietly renewed because those peaches could still be sold at rock-bottom prices, allowing Aldi to splash weekly deal flyers across America and lure in budget-conscious families who believed the chain's slogans about quality and safety. What they weren't told is that every can carried a hidden price, not measured in dollars, but in the health of children exposed to lead that accumulates silently in their bodies, damaging neurons and impairing learning ability long before symptoms appear. Regulators now say these products must be destroyed at all costs, but why did it take multiple states and multiple rounds of illness reports to reach this point? Why was the burden placed on consumers to discover the danger after cans were already opened, already eaten, already poisoning households? The fallout is massive, and it's just beginning. Lawsuits are being drafted. Consumer watchdog groups are demanding federal investigations. And independent food safety researchers are calling Aldi's canned fruit line one of the most dangerous hidden risks in modern grocery retail. Think about it. When a trusted chain knowingly lets toxic food circulate, it is no longer just about negligence. It is about betrayal. And that betrayal cuts deep because Aldi built its reputation on being the store that cares for families, while behind closed doors, it cut deals with the cheapest, dirtiest suppliers it could find. Every can of peaches sitting in pantries across America is a time bomb, and every spoonful is a roll of the dice with long-term consequences that no coupon or recall notice can undo. The question is simple. How many families have to suffer before Aldi is held accountable? And why hasn't there been a nationwide recall that removes every single contaminated can from circulation? Because until that happens, every household with Aldi peaches on the shelf is living with a silent threat that regulators are literally saying must be recalled and destroyed at all costs. Number 2. Aldi packaged spinach. Aldi has been praised for its fresh produce section, offering greens at prices that seem unbeatable. But hidden in those bags of packaged spinach lies one of the most dangerous recalls to date. Because regulators in 9 states have already confirmed contamination with E. coli 01570H7, a deadly strain that has hospitalized dozens and killed at least 2 people nationwide in the last decade whenever it appeared in leafy greens. And now Aldi finds itself at the center of another food safety nightmare. Spinach is supposed to be the symbol of health, packed with iron and vitamins. Yet inside Aldi's sealed plastic bags lurked microscopic killers invisible to the human eye. Bacteria capable of causing kidney failure, seizures, and lifelong complications in children and seniors. State health departments tested random shipments after clusters of illnesses appeared. And the results were horrifying. Contamination levels so high that officials used the words "immediate destruction required" in their recall orders. Families who thought they were making a healthy choice by tossing spinach into smoothies, salads, or omelets unknowingly served pathogens that doctors say can be fatal even in tiny doses. The stories coming out are chilling. One mother in Michigan said her 8-year-old son developed bloody diarrhea and was hospitalized for 5 days after eating a salad made with Aldi spinach. And only when she saw a tiny news clip about a regional recall did she realize the source of his illness. Another couple in Florida reported dizziness, fever, and excruciating abdominal pain after using Aldi spinach in a casserole, symptoms so severe that paramedics had to rush them to the ER in the middle of the night. Yet despite these terrifying cases, Aldi failed to immediately remove all affected products nationwide, leaving bags of deadly spinach on shelves for unsuspecting customers, while issuing quiet statements buried on government recall pages that average shoppers never read. And the nightmare doesn't end with one batch. Inspectors traced the contamination back to farms, using irrigation water tainted with animal waste, an issue documented repeatedly in FDA reports over the last 5 years. Yet Aldi continued sourcing from these farms because the cost was lower than safer. Regulated suppliers. Internal emails leaked by a whistleblower suggest that Aldi executives were aware of prior E. coli risks from these same spinach farms, but chose not to switch suppliers, citing unacceptable price increases as the reason. That means Aldi put corporate profits above public safety, knowingly gambling with human lives to save a few cents per bag of spinach. Scientists warn that leafy greens are among the riskiest foods for contamination because bacteria cling to every crevice of the leaves and survive even after washing. And once sealed in plastic, they multiply rapidly if the temperature chain is broken even slightly during transport. Imagine refrigerated trucks with faulty cooling units, pallets sitting in the sun at a loading dock, or cases of spinach stacked too high in a back room. All it takes is one slip in the chain, and the bacteria grow to levels that can sicken hundreds in a single community. The economic damage is spiraling as lawsuits mount. Hospitals report clusters of cases tied to Aldi spinach, and consumer trust crumbles with every new headline. Shoppers are now flooding online forums with horror stories and photos of half-eaten bags, warning others to stay away. And many say they will never trust Aldi produce again. Meanwhile, Aldi's response has been disturbingly quiet. Generic statements about commitment to food safety, paired with vague reassurances that corrective actions are being taken, but no details. No transparency, no accountability. Regulators have demanded destruction of contaminated stock, yet shoppers continue to report seeing the very same product on shelves days after the recall notices were issued. Proof that Aldi's recall system is broken, sloppy, and dangerously slow. The worst part is how preventable all of this was. Safe water standards, proper testing, stricter supplier audits. All of these measures exist. Yet Aldi chose shortcuts to maintain bargain prices, ignoring the reality that food safety failures in leafy greens kill real people every year. The CDC has documented over 40 outbreaks of E. coli linked to spinach and lettuce since 2006, yet Aldi acted as if the risk was minimal, even as their own products landed in the recall crosshairs. What does that say about a company's values when protecting margins outweighs protecting children from kidney failure? This isn't just negligence. This is corporate malpractice hiding behind the illusion of affordable health. And when 9 states are already screaming that this spinach must be recalled and destroyed immediately, you have to ask, how many more states will join the list? How many more families will suffer? And how many more hospital beds will fill before Aldi finally admits that its supply chain is fundamentally unsafe? Because until they change, every bag of spinach sitting in Aldi's produce aisle is not a bargain. It's a loaded weapon waiting to go off in the hands of unsuspecting shoppers. Number 1, Aldi ground beef. Ground beef is one of the cornerstones of American cooking, from backyard barbecues to weeknight spaghetti dinners. And Aldi has become a go-to for shoppers looking to stretch their dollars. But behind those familiar shrink-wrapped packages of minced meat lurks a nightmare so severe that multiple states have demanded immediate recalls and total destruction of affected shipments because of contamination, with both E. coli and antibiotic-resistant strains of salmonella that scientists warn could trigger the next major foodborne epidemic. Think about that for a moment. Families all across the country bought what they thought was safe, affordable beef, only to discover later that it contained pathogens capable of causing life-threatening illnesses. And because ground beef mixes meat from dozens of cows in massive processing facilities, one infected carcass can contaminate thousands of pounds of product spread across entire regions in a matter of hours. Regulators in states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin have already linked Aldi ground beef to clusters of hospitalizations, with patients ranging from toddlers to seniors, some developing hemolytic uremic syndrome, a terrifying complication that destroys kidneys and can end lives in a matter of days. Yet despite these mounting warnings, Aldi failed to immediately pull every package nationwide, leaving contaminated meat on shelves long after the first outbreak reports surfaced. Insiders from one Midwest processing plant described horrifying conditions. Workers rushing to meet production quotas even when equipment failed. Blood and waste pooling near conveyor belts, and supervisors instructing staff to keep the line moving, even after clear contamination events. One whistleblower even leaked photos showing meat grinding machines with visible rust and grease dripping onto the beef destined for Aldi packaging. And this is what ended up in family refrigerators across America. Customers reported buying ground beef that looked gray only 2 days after purchase, with foul odors masked by tight packaging. Yet Aldi customer service brushed off these complaints with robotic responses, denying responsibility until regulators forced their hand with recall mandates. Families have shared online that they served Aldi ground beef in chili or burgers, only to have entire households struck with fevers, vomiting, and bloody diarrhea within 48 hours, some requiring IV fluids and hospitalization to survive. These are not rare accidents. These are systemic failures repeated year after year in a supply chain that prioritizes speed and cost above basic sanitation and safety. The deeper investigators dug, the more horrifying the picture became. Tests revealed that some Aldi beef contained strains of salmonella resistant to multiple frontline antibiotics, meaning that standard treatments failed, prolonging illness and raising the risk of severe complications. Public health officials have long warned that antibiotic overuse in industrial farming is creating superbugs, and Aldi's relentless sourcing from the cheapest, largest producers has now funneled those risks directly into American kitchens. Imagine cooking burgers for your kids, thinking you've browned them safely, only to learn later that these mutated bacteria survive longer and spread faster, leaving your family vulnerable even when you thought you did everything right. This isn't just food poisoning. This is a public health crisis wrapped in Aldi's discount packaging. And the fallout is enormous. Lawsuits are already stacking up. Consumer advocacy groups are calling for federal intervention, and independent food safety researchers are demanding Aldi disclose every supplier tied to these contaminated shipments. But transparency is the one thing Aldi refuses to provide, hiding behind vague statements about reviewing safety protocols while shelves remain stocked and customers remain in danger. Regulators have been blunt. These products must be recalled and destroyed at all costs, because leaving even a single contaminated pound of ground beef in circulation could mean another child in the ICU, another senior hooked to dialysis, another family broken by a tragedy that should never have happened. Yet, even as the warnings grow louder, Aldi's silence is deafening, a calculated gamble that consumers will forget, that headlines will fade, and that profits will recover faster than the truth spreads. Ask yourself, what does it say about a company when 9 states have already raised red flags? When inspectors are literally ordering destruction of their products, and when families are begging for accountability, but shelves remain full of the very items fueling the crisis? It says that Aldi values its bottom line more than your life, that the promise of affordable groceries is a mask hiding the ugly truth of a supply chain riddled with shortcuts, contamination, and lies. And until Aldi is forced to change, every pound of ground beef in their coolers represents a roll of the dice with your health, your safety, and your family's future. This is not an isolated recall. This is a collapse of trust, and it's unfolding right now in plain sight. When you put all of this together, the frozen chicken strips crawling with salmonella, the canned peaches laced with heavy metals, the spinach carrying deadly E. coli, and the ground beef tainted with antibiotic-resistant bacteria, it paints a picture of a grocery chain that has completely betrayed the trust of its customers. Because Aldi isn't just cutting corners. It's gambling with human lives to save pennies on the dollar. And 9 states have already been forced to issue recalls and demand destruction of these products at all costs. Families who thought they were buying safe food for their kids ended up in hospitals. Seniors on fixed incomes trusted budget groceries only to face toxic exposure. And regulators are scrambling to contain a crisis that never should have reached store shelves in the first place. And the worst part is, this is only what has been exposed publicly. How many more products are quietly slipping by? How many more contaminants are hidden behind that cheap price tag? And how long until another outbreak explodes across the country? This is Discover USA Collapse, and we've laid out the evidence. Now the question is for you, the viewers. Did Aldi go too far in its reckless pursuit of profit? And will you ever trust their brand again after knowing the truth? Or is this the moment when America finally realizes that cheap food can come with the highest price of all, your health and your life?